Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Open Book. I am Billy Price. I am one of the two co-founders of Billy Footwear, and if you are experiencing Open Book for the first time today, you are in for a big treat. So first off, let me give you a little background about Open Book. We as a brand, we are an open book. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to share what's going on with the brand, share our backstory, share how we got to be where we are today. But also, I would say what warms my heart the most about Open Book is when we get the chance to share the screen with the amazing people that we collaborate with. So today we are honored to have Julia. Julia is a former special educator and the founder of Sense-ational You, which we are going to learn all about. So Julia, welcome to Open Book.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Julia, there's a lot of things I want to talk about, a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I think a great place for us to start is just tell us about and what is Sense-ational You?
Yeah, so Sense-ational You is an adaptive clothing brand that really targets sensory needs and invisible disabilities. So we add sensory tools right into the clothing, from sound reduction to compression, and it's all built in so that you wouldn't be able to tell from the outside that these tools are there and being helpful.
So to start something like that, there's got to be some sort of motivator. So what was the motivator to take that on? Because I'm sure it took some work to get that thing going.
Yeah, it was definitely a crazy kind of culmination of a lot of things going on in my life, but I was majoring in fashion design and separately started volunteering at a local autism preschool. And a lot of those parents and educators brought up sensory challenges to me and challenges with clothing that I had just never thought of before, which really sent me down this whole inquiry and this whole path of what adaptive fashion was. But it really wasn't until I started working in special education that I really saw how needed a lot of tools were and how difficult a lot of clothing could be, from either independence of dressing or just sensory wise. So I started building some of these designs that, as you said, were definitely difficult to all come together and figure out, but it took a lot of outside research and resources and great connections I made to get it all together, but really grew from just needs that I saw my students having, and it's something that was common in my school.
Okay. Well, can you talk about some of those challenges? I mean, not the dressing part of it to start, but yeah. I'm talking about more like the sensory, because that's something that's a bit foreign to me. And I just wanted to, I think it'd be great to get a better understanding of how certain materials can really be problematic for some folks. And I was hoping you could touch on like what kind of challenges can come from a conflicting type of sense like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of things. I think one of the biggest that's super common is the tag. If you think about anything you're wearing, there's usually pretty much a booklet of information in the side or back neck of your shirts. And those can be minorly irritating, or you may not even notice them. But for someone who processes that sensory input differently, it could actually feel really painful. It can feel like their shirt is cutting into them or cutting their neck. So it becomes completely intolerable to wear. Because if you imagine if it was actually something like a knife in our shirt, you wouldn't be able to keep it on your body, let alone learn in a classroom. So that was one of the biggest obvious ones. And as you mentioned, fabric can play a huge role. Even the seams, if you notice of how your clothing's put together, if there's fabric on the inside where it is put together, that can be really bothersome because it's rubbing back and forth and being irritating, kind of like a tag. And so those are all things that can then contribute to sensory overload that makes other things harder to handle, whether it be the noise or the lights or other things around you. If that kind of tolerance is already built up from everything going on with your clothing, that's kind of where that total sensory overload can come from.
Wow. Well, that explains it perfectly. And I'm kind of curious, do you see, like, what can you see when you're like, as an educator, like when you're in that space, can you like visually kind of see indicators that you can, like perhaps a student was having a challenge with that type of feeling? I'm just kind of curious, like when you're observing the classroom, like what would be some of the signs you'd be looking for?
Yeah, there was actually I think it was my first week even working in special education, and I was having this idea of this clothing brand and what it would look like and what features we'd have. There was this one girl who was always honestly like A+ student, always listened to every direction the teachers gave. And there's this time she was just not lining up when all the students were told to line up at the door, and it was so unlike her. And other teachers at the door were kind of repeatedly saying it, calling her name. And I just went over and noticed that she was tugging at that tag in the side of her shirt. And I was like, oh, maybe this is one of those sensory things I've been researching. So I just cut the tag out of her shirt, and she instantly just looked up and went over and sat with the group without like any extra direction. So it's like she heard it, but she couldn't move or process it till she went to go and sit. And that's where it really clicked for me. I was like, oh, this is having a huge impact. Like tags can be a huge problem, not just like a minor inconvenience. So things like that made it really obvious. I physically saw them playing with the tags. Other things with fabric was like, I saw a boy in jeans. At lunch dumped his water bottle on his lap, and it was just like instant meltdown. He just knew he was just intolerable. He was trying to strip out of them. Like that was also very obvious. So where it kind of builds up and something else might be the final trigger is hard to see, but sometimes you really see those obvious sensory clothing related ones.
Wow. Well, those are two great examples for sure. And but talk about life changing just by changing out a tag. I mean, to be able to all of a sudden be completely focused where before you couldn't, it's quite remarkable how a minor change like that can cause such tremendous positive impact.
Yeah, I think it's something that you don't realize until you notice it and observe it, because if a tag doesn't bother you, you're like, why would that even really matter? It can't be that bothersome or that impactful. But when you see that really quick change, you're like, oh, this can make a huge difference for a lot of people.
I think a lot of folks don't they have a positive reaction as well from weighted blankets?
Yeah, so there's almost like two different sides of sensory where you like love sensory input and need more of it to feel regulated. And those are called sensory seekers. And then there's sensory avoiders who hate anything additional. And those are usually mixed up, but those are the easy two buckets to put people in. And so people who are sensory seekers and love that input, love like weighted blankets and compression and anything that's kind of really grounding to your nervous system. So they even make like weighted stuffed animals or like a weighted lap pad, which are really great at school.
I've also heard of garments, and maybe you have this, but garments that, or like trying to work in like little fidget toys as well.
Yeah, there's definitely so many more I want to be able to add in. We do with our magnetic closures, we added a magnetic pocket onto the joggers that acts as a fidget, which was kind of by accident. My students all just started fidgeting with it when it was on a sample, and I was like, oh, we definitely got to add those into like all the pants.
So how does that work? I mean, is it kind of a distractor? I mean, can you talk about like the connection and like similar to like the tag example you're talking about, like you remove the tag, all of a sudden like they're able to focus. Having a fidget toy, how does that benefit one's ability to focus? Because it seems like if you have a fidget toy, they are encouraging them to fidget, but somehow it has a positive result.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think it's a hard one because there are kind of those two sides. With the fidgets, it's actually because it's not a distressing thing like the tag. So the tag's distracting because it's painful and you're trying to get it out and you're trying to figure out why it's bothering you. A fidget can really help someone focus whose brain really can be all over the place. So if you think about kind of classic examples you see on TV of people with ADHD, or you may know someone, if it's really hard to kind of center your thoughts and you're hearing a bunch of things, you're thinking about a lot of things, you're thinking about the lights that are flickering, you're hearing the kids behind you having a conversation, you may not be able to hone in on what you're supposed to be doing. And the fidget can just be something that can be really calming and really grounding that then increases that focus on what you can be doing. So I think where a lot of people can see it as a toy and as a distraction, it would be if you don't need it. But if you're someone who does kind of struggle to sit at the desk and stay on topic and stay focused on what you're supposed to be doing, that added task is actually something that can be really grounding and really help you on that.
Wow. So, I mean, Julia, this information is absolutely incredible. And I'm just like so struck by your passion to be in this space. And I mean, did you stumble into this? I mean, it just seems like in your story, you're talking about, all of a sudden you're working in the classroom, but it's like, did you always have like kind of this desire to like end up in this destination, or was there some sort of like specific trigger that pushed you in this spot?
Yeah, kind of a combination of both. I wanted to do fashion, but I always knew I wanted to do something with an impact. I didn't want to be contributing to fast fashion or just be doing runways. I was never like that level of creative. So I knew I always wanted to do something a little more practical, a little more functional, but didn't know what that looked like. I ended up going to Cornell because so many professors were doing awesome research, whether that be firefighter uniforms or military uniforms. I was like, okay, that's cool that's still fashion, but you're having an impact. So I didn't know directly that I wanted to do adaptive, but knew I wanted to do something within fashion that was having this positive impact on society. But yeah, it really wasn't until I kind of fell into this partnership with a local autism preschool and then went into teaching because of that, that it fully clicked for me that this was what I was passionate about doing and where I could use fashion to make a difference where it wasn't already.
Mm. Well, beautiful. I mean, it's amazing how life's path leads us to some very interesting places and areas where one can add a lot of value. Speaking of which, I'd love to ladder this into Sense-ational You and talk about the website, because what you've been able to do on there, not only just the products, but even the resources too, I think is incredible. So I'm going to up on the screen, I'm going to put the website. Can you talk about the website and what people can find there?
Yeah, so the first thing you'll find when you go in is the shop with all of our different clothing items, which are anything from sensory hoodies that help block sound to t-shirts with compression that we talked about and the pants with the fidgets, even just simple sensory friendly tagless garments and things with magnetic closures to help with independent dressing. So a variety there in the shop tab. And then a tab over, you'll see resources, and we offer a few different things. One of them is a visual schedule that can really help kids with independent dressing and getting dressed, especially if that's a hard sensory experience. It's helpful to break it down step by step of what's going to happen, what they can anticipate. So wanted to make sure we had that up there for anyone looking for something to help them in the morning and help their kids get dressed. And beyond that, you'll see our resource blog that we try to keep pretty up to date. You'll get like 4 to 8 blogs a month, really covering a variety of topics. You can really dig back and find anything, but try to just cover a lot there, whether it's related to clothing or not, within the sensory realm, whether that be feeding or winter activities, or dealing with the summer heat, because sensory can really impact so many different parts of life. And if you're someone who struggles with clothing or may need the sensory clothing, there are probably a lot of other challenges. So wanting to make sure that we can help educate parents as best as possible there too.
So up on screen, everyone, for those that are listening in, it is the website. So it's shopsensationalyou.com. So let me spell this out: shopsensationalyou.com. And so I'm curious, Julia, when it comes to the website, how many of these products are like specifically your products, and how many of these products are also that you're working with other vendors? Because I know we have the honor of being a part of on your website too, and through our collaboration. But I'm curious, like, what's kind of the distribution between Sense-ational You and working with other vendors?
Yeah, so actually all of the products are ours except Billy Footwear. So you guys were an awesome partnership for us. Yeah, it was something that I knew would kind of complete our outfit for adaptive head to toe, and knew that shoes would have a great impact there. But yeah, everything else you'll find is actually ours.
Oh, love it. Well, the one thing I love about, I mean, there's so many things I love about what you're doing, but one thing that I think is really cool, and because our shoes, like, there's so many people that come to our brand because they may have some sort of disability. I myself have a disability. I broke my neck as a teenager, and I use a wheelchair, and my hand dexterity is not the best. So I need a different way to put my shoes on. But just because I have a disability and use those shoes, that doesn't necessarily mean that the shoes only work for someone with a disability. And I think that's really cool, because when I look at all of the offerings that you have through Sense-ational You, it really seems like it's meant for everybody. Just a very easy on, easy off garment that can benefit like really the greater mass.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big mission for us, is just kind of spreading inclusion through clothing that really can be for anyone. And I think even our more adaptive designs, like our hoodie that helps block sound and it has an eye mask that can pull down for sensory overload, honestly is great for everyone, because I know I use it to take naps on a plane, and it has so many great uses like that. And I think it just goes to show that all these products designed for different disabilities or for different people really benefit everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, the word we love is universal design.
Yes, I love that.
So I'm curious, was that a word that kind of picked up within design, or is that something that, like, when you're studying design and you had that heart, were you looking at more of like a universal design approach all along?
Yeah, I think that was always my goal. I think the language kind of over the years now that has kind of been debated and changed. I know people say adaptive fashion, but they're like, no, but it is for everyone, or universal design. But I definitely knew that I always wanted to create things that a lot of people could benefit from, so that a child that needed the clothing and their sibling who maybe doesn't need it could all wear the same thing, and really spread inclusion that way, and really help children feel assimilated. I think with a lot of sensory tools, they can be really isolating, and a lot of kids as they get older don't want to wear them. So I didn't want our clothing brand to be kind of another version of that, where they knew, oh, if they're wearing that hoodie, that means XYZ. So I think that was always a fundamental part of why I wanted to design it to be so universal.
Oh man, I completely echo what you're saying. I absolutely love that, because that was the big thing. Our big thing was remembering what it was like being on the playground growing up. And the last thing we wanted to do is because if somebody's wearing something different, the other kids around them would remind them they're wearing something different. And the last thing we wanted to do is bring something to market that made you feel different. We wanted to make sure it would be something that would be desired by everybody and make everyone empowered and just feel that. So what you just said, oh man, I agree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to forget those playground days, but I think any small change, I know in my era, we were like the UGG era, and it's like if you didn't have the right new color UGG of that year, it was like there were comments, and it can just be so hard being a kid that you definitely don't want to add to that in any way for any kid in what you're designing.
Totally. Well, Julia, this is absolutely amazing. I think you and I could talk forever and spitball ideas and stuff, but I want to be respectful of your time. But I do have one more question. I mean, what you've been able to accomplish thus far is awesome. And obviously, like, your footprint is more being in an online space. It can really stretch to all corners of the globe. I'm just kind of curious, when you look at like the bigger picture and where you want to go, what does that big picture look like?
Yeah, I definitely think wanting to get it out there in more places where people already are, whether that be through partnerships or just being able to get there offline so people can really feel them and try them on, I think is huge. I think especially in the sensory space. But I think beyond that, really, there's so much within sensory and within universal and adaptive design that being able to continue to broaden our offerings and be able to meet different sensory needs and have this whole shop where you can just go and filter by the sensory need you're looking for, and then be able to shop by style is, I think, the ultimate dream for the company, rather than just having kind of right now we have like a main style per sensory need, and wanting to make sure that that expands and it's the most freeing, sensory friendly shopping experience possible.
Would love it. So let me put it back up on the screen here. So everyone, again, the website's up on the screen again. It's shopsensationalyou.com. That's the website we were just talking about. One thing we didn't talk about was on social. So make sure to check them out on social as well. The social is at sensational_you. Is that all social, like with both Instagram, Facebook? Like how far does that?
Yeah, try to keep it super consistent. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, you can pretty much find us on all the platforms.
Okay, perfect. So the handle is sensational_you. So let me spell this out. SENSEATIONAL, then underscore, and then YOU. Julia, thank you so much again for your time. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So everyone else out there, this was another episode of Open Book. I hope you enjoyed it. We will have another again real soon. So until then, take care. Thanks so much.